Hello and welcome to Glutes and Core, my favorite. I know I say everything's my favorite, but I really like glutes and core exercising and yoga things and stuff. So I'm so excited. I just want to tell you everything about this video right now, like just all at once. But what we'll do instead is Carla's going to calm down and we'll start in our centering posture. So probably a child's pose, balasana, or whatever other centering posture works for you, okay? So getting yourself all set up, and maybe that's a blanket beneath your pose, maybe that's a block beneath your forehead, whatever you need to feel comfortable while we center. So take a moment here, getting all settled in. While we're here, starting to bring our attention inward, closer to the four corners of our mats, maybe even feeling where your body connects with the earth or connects with your mat. Feeling the temperature of your mat, of the air on your skin. Starting to let go of whatever happened before your practice began. And allowing your body to realize that your practice, something amazing and wonderful, is about to begin. And taking the next few moments to set an intention for your practice. There's so many benefits to yoga. So just picking one of them, whether that's the same intention as the last few classes, or maybe it's something completely different today. Whatever it is, picking that one and resonating on that for a moment. From here, take 3 slow, deep breaths through the nose, taking your time. Slow, deep inhales and slow exhales. Taking all the time you need. And when you're ready, make your way nice and slow to a downward facing dog. So hips pressing up and back, and maybe walking it out a little bit. Feeling a nice stretch in the backs of the legs. And like we talked about, I think it was the last class, when you're in your downward dog, see if you can allow the belly to scoop in and up. So not pulling the belly in, but just sort of let it go and notice how it almost presses up against the spine and moves upwards, making its way almost up and underneath the rib cage. Maybe shifting hips from side to side. And then slowly lowering your hands and knees. And all the way to seated, or whatever. We'll just chat about stuff now. So for this class today, this is actually going to be a very, very simple class. Not necessarily easy, but it's very simple. I love things that are simple. Just give it to me straight. What is it? What's the thing? So today the thing is bridge pose. Setu Bandha Sarvangasana, bridge pose. So we're going to do core in bridge and glutes in bridge in a couple of different ways that might be new to you, or maybe not. If you've taken classes with me, you've probably done something like this before. What you'll need for this class, I'll give you a moment to go fetch some things if you need, but I'm going to be using a block like this. If you don't have a block like this, maybe a couch cushion, or not a phone book, they don't make those anymore, you know, something this shaped, whatever that might be. Maybe it's a few blankets. It doesn't have to be very high though. And once you found that, coming back to your mat, and ladies and or gentlemen who have long hair, you may want to have a high ponytail because we'll be lying. The whole class is basically just lying down, piece of cake. It'll be really, really easy-ish. So what we'll do is take your block, and we're starting out with a supported bridge. So this is nice, actually. You'll have the block beneath your hips. So we lay all the way back, and then place the block beneath your hips. I just realized I have dark colored shorts, and my mat's also dark colored, as is my block. So hopefully you can see that. But basically what we're trying to do is, like, my shoulder blades are fully on the floor, and I've got my feet fairly wide apart so that my knees can kind of tip in towards each other. And I'm able to completely relax my hips down. So it's not a full like inversion. It's just things are, gravity's moving this way, okay? So while we're here, we're going to start working on core a little bit. Now, the reason why I like to start with like very, very beginner core in this position is because if you perchance have like a diastasis recti, it's where the fascia that connects the abdominal muscles separates. This can happen to anyone who's been pregnant before, or often it's men who go to the gym and they are just a slight misalignment with the abdominal muscles can cause that pressure when you use your abdominal muscles. So what we're trying to do is learn how to use our abdominal muscles without doing such a challenging exercise. So what this does, and it's probably mostly especially for people who have carried pregnancies before. You don't carry pregnancies, you are pregnant and you carry babies. So with that, let's not get into detail, but things shift in flight, ladies, okay? So what we're doing is shifting things back this way. So even for myself, it's been many, many years since I've had a baby, but it still works for me, okay? So even if you're like recovered and everything, this is still a really great place to start. What we're going to do is, for a moment, you can just relax and allow things to shift. So you can feel almost like we were feeling when in our downward facing dog, the abdominal muscles floating upward towards the rib cage. So things are shifting upward, everything from the pelvic floor all the way up to the lower ribs or the floating ribs. And just take a moment to feel that. Feel things shifting. In yoga, we're trying to create what we call a mind-body connection. And when I first started yoga, I thought, oh, that sounds deep and philosophical, but it's really not. It's really just knowing and locating without having to look at it, every body part. And so it's really simple. Not easy, though. I've heard that some yogis can like close their eyes and identify where their spleen is. They can feel it. I cannot. But some things, you know, if you've ever had, I suppose if you've had appendicitis and you've had it removed before, you would have been knowing exactly where your appendix is, that type of a thing. But we don't want to have such a like a negative or a strong. We don't want it to be pain related, but we're trying to locate things. So while you're here tuning into your body, see what you can feel. Can you locate specifically your stomach? There's a difference between your stomach and your intestinal tract. And at first you might be like, nope, I feel squish and it's moving this way, and that's fine. Taking a moment, Just feel what you feel. Then we move on to starting to use our abdominals. What we'll do is, for this exercise, we'll use both the pelvic floor and the abdominal muscles at the same time. So what that'll feel like is squeezing. It's kind of like you're squeezing your butt cheeks together, or it's like you have to go to the bathroom, but there's none in sight. So you squeeze your pelvic floor. That's all it is. So that's your pelvic floor activating. And then your abdominal muscles, pull them in. Okay, so you've got pelvic floor squeezing, belly pulling in, and just hang out there for a second. A couple seconds. Just feel that. And then release. The next exercise is very similar to that, but what we'll do is, when we don't have a very strong core or very good control over our core, we start out by being able to squeeze everything as hard as we can or release everything. What we're going to try to learn how to do is isolate and control things a little bit. So what we'll do now is exactly the same thing as before. We will squeeze our pelvic floor, engaging our pelvic floor and our abdominal muscles, but we're trying to use 50% of our capacity, okay? If you're like, I still don't know what you're talking about, Carla, let's just try this. If you don't get it, it's okay. Okay, so we're here, we're laying here, not using any muscles at all for a second. Then we squeeze pelvic floor and pull the belly in, but not like as hard as you can, like 50%. So just a little bit squeeze the pelvic floor and a little bit squeeze the abdominal muscles inward. We don't want to push the abdominal muscles out. We want to scoop them inward, okay, like 50%. While we're here, we're going to hang out here at our 50% mark for a little while. Okay, so it's not like you're doing a million crunches. You're just very gently engaging your pelvic floor and your abdominal muscles. And we're going to hang out here for a bit. While we're here, we still have to breathe. That's the tricky bit. So while we're here, we're still breathing against the strength of our abdominal muscles. In classes, I often talked about belly breathing. Now, I wanted to share with you a little bit more information about that. We're still 50%, remember? 50% engaging while I'm yammering away. The reason why in classes I always or often would talk about belly breathing was because we don't want to exclusively chest breathe. But the truth is, we don't actually have lungs in our intestinal tract. We have lungs a little bit higher up in where our lungs are. So what we're eventually working towards is not specifically belly breathing. That's kind of like a beginner exercise so that we can isolate certain things. But in this instance, think about the ribs expanding, okay? So we've still got that 50% happening, but we're breathing. So we're expanding on every inhale and exhale. You'll notice things kind of move downward a little bit. Keep going at your own pace, slow, deep breathing. Don't worry about if it's the belly or the chest. Just try not to have too much up in the chest region. So feeling really expansive wherever it wants to go. So let your lungs expand. And you might feel even a little bit of a stretch in your intercostal muscles. Okay, all the muscles between each rib. So keep going. You're still at 50%. Squeezing that pelvic floor and belly scooping in like 50%. While we're breathing. Just a couple more deep breaths. Let's do 1. And 2. And release. From here, let's release the block and lower the pelvis all the way down. When you're ready, one at a time, hug the knees in and give yourself a little squeeze. You may be feeling a number of different things. You might be feeling nothing at all. That felt great. And if that's the case, that's fantastic. If you felt your low back aching at all, what that is when we use our abdominal core, everything's connected. We actually have muscles that go all the way to your back. So when we strengthen our core, you'll also feel a bit of achiness in the back, so long as it's not sharp pain in your vertebra or in your vertebrae, then it's muscles, right? We want an ache in the belly of a muscle is completely okay, and it's the muscle getting stronger. What we want to avoid is sharp pain. So if you felt sharp pain, then let's not repeat that, okay? You can maybe try it again with your hips on the floor. If everything felt a-okay, try it again. We'll come up onto the block, hips on the block. And once again, getting yourself situated. Sometimes it's a bit of a trial and error. Where does the block go? We'll repeat the same exercise this time to 75%. And if you're like, but I don't know exactly the percentage or the percentile, don't worry about it. 75%-ish. Okay, so here we go. Pelvic floor pulls up, belly scoops in. 75%-ish. Okay, we're still breathing. I like to place my hands on my low ribs just to sort of feel the expansion of the rib cage. You can keep your arms wherever you want to. So we're slow, deep breathing, and we've got our pelvic floor and our core engaged about 75%. I find that when I do that, my glutes engage automatically. I'm not really doing anything to try that, but I have less weight all of a sudden on my block than I did last time. That's okay. That's a good thing. Okay. So this is no longer just a passive stretch. This is we're actively using our muscles. So keep going. 75%. Still pelvic floor pulling up, still belly scooping in. From here, let's step it up a notch, 100%. So I notice when I go 100%, my glutes engage just sort of without me trying. I'm thinking of pelvic floor pulling up, belly scooping in 100%. So pulling the belly in, squeezing the pelvic floor, and breathing. So I'm breathing against the strength of my core. It's a little bit harder to breathe, you might notice, and your breathing might be a little bit staccato. So we're trying to smooth out the breathing. Just a little bit longer. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Squeezing the pelvic floor, pulling the belly in. For the last 5 seconds, try and squeeze 110%. I know that's not mathematically a thing, but just work with me, humor me. So pelvic floor squeezes, belly scoops in, pressing down towards the spine for 5. Still breathing. 4, 3, 2, and 1. Relax completely. That was loud. So take a moment to completely relax. Let your knees tip in towards each other maybe. When you feel ready, you might feel like I don't want to move quite yet, but when you feel ready, remove the block, gently lowering the hips down, one at a time, hug the knees in, and just give yourself a moment, maybe rocking side to side if that feels nice. Okay. Next, moving on to hamstrings and glutes. We'll do a bit of a dynamic bridge. So you take your block, and instead of placing it beneath the hips, we'll place it between the knees. Okay. I like to use the narrowest version, especially I have a larger block, but a lot of us think our hips are about this wide, but it's usually not true. So hips width apart, usually on the narrowest setting. Feet are about hips width apart, maybe just slightly wider. From here, hands are facing, palms facing down onto the mat beside you. And then from here, we're working on the glutes mostly, but also using the adductors, so that's the inseams of the legs, and the hamstrings will work as well. These are all the muscle groups that we don't use very often, and it's really tricky to isolate them. When we do this specific exercise, it's really challenging not to use those specific muscle groups. So this is why I love this one so, so much. From here, keep the feet firmly planted on the floor, and you can even press a little bit into your arms, but slowly, slowly allow the hips to come up off the floor. And then from here, what we're trying to do is create as much space between yourself and the floor as possible, gently squeezing the knees inward so that you don't drop your block. It doesn't have to be a lot. We often think we have to power through things and no pain, no gain, and you need blood, sweat, and tears in your yoga practice. It's not true. It's not true. Often the more simple the exercise, the more effective it is. So even if you have an advanced yoga practice and you're like, this is boring, I guarantee you've got little muscles working that don't work when we do our advanced practice. Most advanced practitioners do go back to basics at least once in a while, just to check in, little tune-up, little maintenance, to be sure we're using the correct muscle groups. So while we're here, thinking of as much space between yourself and the floor as possible, and then slowly, slowly, slowly lower. So with this exercise, we repeat that motion. And what I like to do, I've got like one hair that's like, or a couple strands of hair that I keep sitting on, and it keeps trying to pull my hair out. First world problems. Okay. So with this exercise, it's a dynamic motion. So we go up and we go down, we go up, we go down, and we will be doing this one like later, like next week and such, so that it's going to be a lot more challenging and a lot quicker. This is why I like to do a video and just break it down step by step. So looking straight up at the ceiling, it's nice to not move the neck in this position in our bridge poses. So we lift the hips up, 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 as far as we can comfortably go. And then we lower the hips, slow, 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 until the hips barely touch the earth. And then again, hips go up, 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 up. And slowly, hips go down, slow, 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 slow. Just one more. So our knees are gently squeezing inwards, not too much. Slow, 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 slow. And see if you can lift the hips just a little bit higher. Keep the heels on the floor. You might even feel that in the low back as well. And there's a tendency your knees will want to spread out to the side. You might drop your block. Try to keep that block. And we're using the whole back side of the body. And then slow, 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 slow. Lowering. From here, release the block and hug the knees in. Maybe a little rock from side to side. Preparing for our final bridge posture, which is full bridge. From here, the feet are slightly wider than hips width apart. Feet are parallel. There's a tendency to splay them out. I know I do. It's just a human thing. Our feet like to go outward. So keep them parallel. Palms facing down, looking straight up at the ceiling. Keep the heels on the floor. And just like we did in the dynamic bridge, lift the hips up as high as they'll go. Either hold here, gently squeezing the knees inward. We don't have a block, but pretend that we do. So you don't need a prop to necessarily do the same action. We did this before with the block so that you could feel what it feels like. Now, if you'd like to go further, interlace the fingers beneath you and then tuck the shoulders one at a time underneath you while maintaining that focus on the ceiling. So we don't want to really move the neck too much while we're tucking those shoulders under. See if you can lift the hips a little bit higher and hold. What we're thinking about here is equal weight on each foot, straight ahead looking with the head so our neck is neutral, little bit of pressure on the imaginary block between the knees, lots of space between yourself and the floor. See if you can lift the hips just a little bit higher. And to come out, reversing course. So we Untuck the shoulders as we release the hands, and slowly, slowly, as the knees are gently pressing in towards each other, lowering the hips down. One at a time. Hug the knees in, maybe a little rock from side to side. And we're done. From here, preparing for Shavasana. If you'd like something beneath the knees, go ahead and support your Shavasana. Getting whatever you need to feel cozy. Maybe that's putting back on a sweater or a blanket. And settling in. If it's okay on your back, then extending the legs, arms along your sides, palms facing up, and closing the eyes. Softening everything, everything, everything. Allowing yourself to feel heavy into the floor. And really letting the floor support you. Softening the neck and the shoulders. And all the way down the arms. Letting the fingers softly curl. Softening the face. Softening around the eyes. And even the muscle between the eyes. Just letting it all go. If you'd like to stay a while longer, feel free to do so. Otherwise, wiggling fingers and toes. And gently roll your head from side to side. Then reaching your arms above head on the floor. Give yourself a really big stretch, feeling totally refreshed. And bending your knees one at a time, hugging them in. And then roll over to the right side. And give yourself a moment to pause there. And when you feel ready, start to press yourself all the way up to a comfortable seated position. Palms facing up on the knees. Inhale, sitting up tall. Exhale, softly close the eyes. And just taking those final moments to thank yourself for showing up to your practice today and taking care of you. And another final little thought for someone else who might need it today. And slowly open the eyes. Namaste, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you in the next one.